On December 25th, one name says it all. Magoo, Mr. Magoo.
We're gonna need some backup.
Ladies' man.
You know what I want? Give it to me.
You modern women.
Man's man.
It wouldn't last. I've never loved you.
Oh, man.
This Christmas, it's every man for himself. Leslie Nielsen is Mr. Magoo, the new name for cool. Rated PG. Starts Christmas Day.
Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome back to the Happiest cast on Earth, the show where we review anything and everything that was somehow released by the Walt Disney Corporation. I am your host, as always, Ryan Johnson. Oh boy, that was a movie. Kind of. Today, I am joined by nobody because nobody wanted to watch this movie. Don't blame them. We're looking at what is possibly one of the worst movies I have ever seen, and what is unmistakably the worst movie I have ever had to watch for this show. That being the infamous live-action film of Mr. Magoo, starring Leslie Nielsen. I guess a little bit of my history with Mr. Magoo. I'm not 100% familiar with the Mr. Magoo cartoons, outside the fact that he's an old blind man. Well, not really blind, he just has vision problems, who gets into crazy over-the-top scenarios, but miraculously ends up being okay in the end. Now, it's a cartoon, so it's obviously not true to how actual blind people are like in real life, or other visually impaired people, but I've never really seen any of the Mr. Magoo cartoons, so I can't really compare them to this movie. Although I do have the Shout Factory box set because I'm curious about them. If they're anything like this movie, which they probably aren't, they're probably actually funny. This movie is not. And there's a reason why I say that this is the worst movie I've ever had to review for this show. If we don't count the Good Time to Jungle Book, because that was for an April Fool's joke and is clearly a lesser made project. So I guess of the real movies I've covered, this is easily the worst. It is abysmal. But I don't need to tell you that. It's Mr. Magoo, for God's sake. We all know how bad this movie is, right? So what was the point of me even making this episode of the show? The Wheel of Names said so. The Wheel of Names, the infamous Wheel of Names, selected the live-action Mr. Magoo movie. And here I am talking about it, having just seen it just a couple days ago. And life has ended up making me not record this episode until a couple hours before it's set to release. So this is going to be a very, very quick one, which is why I'm recording it straight off the camcorder. But my God, this movie is abysmal. There is not a single redeeming aspect of this film. Although I guess you could say there is one kind of redeeming aspect, and that's Leslie Nielsen. Which, he's Leslie Nielsen. you can give him a role where all he does is just poops into a bucket and he'll give it 1,010%. Or at least he will try to make that unfunny material the funniest thing in the world. But the problem is, he doesn't elevate the material. This is such an unfunny movie that even Leslie Nielsen can't make it work. But I do want to point out how the world itself kind of reacts to Mr. Magoo and him being visually impaired, because blind is really not the accurate term because he can see. He just sees terribly. Because literally all this guy needs is a pair of glasses, and all of his problems will be solved. But he thinks he sees just fine. He doesn't think he needs glasses, and so he goes about his day because he has a very bad optometrist. The issue is that, like, barely anybody really accompanies this man whenever he's going about his day. They let him drive a car. In fact, they even altered the windshield so that it could fit his vision. At that point, it would just be cheaper just to give him a pair of glasses. It's like, here, you need these. They'd probably be like, whoa, I can see everything now. Like, come on, man. Also, yeah, let's give the visually impaired man a giant thing of scissors to cut this rope. Let's let him drive everywhere with nobody else accompanying him. Let's let him just roam alone with nothing but a dog that isn't even on a leash for him to guide him. It's just little things like that that may be fine in a 7-minute cartoon, but in a 90-minute live action movie, you start to question it. It's like, hey, this is kind of screwed up. What are we doing here? Like, let's just let this old blind man just roam around and do absolutely everything by himself and almost die every day. So Mr. Magoo is owning this museum. He tries to, cut the grand opening ribbon, but he ends up cutting wires instead. But at the same time, at the grand opening, there is a jewel thief. The jewel thief is going on. The robbery is getting this big MacGuffin stone that's worth a lot of money, and they steal it. However, Mr. Magoo was also in there because he got trapped in a mummy casket, and the robbers have the stone. And eventually, the authorities reached the crazy conclusion that Magoo has the stone because he was there at the scene of the crime. However, things get a little bit wackier when the freaking Mr. Magoo goes fishing and I guess he mistakes the boat for sea. I mean, I think some of his little like visual like mistakes should be like somewhat logical. Like, I feel like even if your vision is blurry and all, you should be able to tell. And it's a boat, right? Probably not a good idea for me to fish here. Like, that's a big issue with this movie's comedy. If I'm constantly questioning how if this character just used their brain cells for half a second, then this wouldn't even happen. That's not the signs of a good comedy that will make me laugh. I'll laugh at just about anything. And I didn't laugh at this movie once. It's just not funny in the slightest. But anyway, he ends up fishing off this boat that has the jewel deeds, and he gets the jewel accidentally. But this is even stupider. The dog, Angus, knows that that's the jewel, but he brings it to Mr. Magoo, and he feels it was like, oh, you just want to play fetch? I know you probably can't see that it's a jewel, but you have hands. You can feel it. You can feel it. You should be able to tell that that is not a dog toy. In fact, it feels very much different from a dog toy. It feels like a priceless artifact that belongs in a museum. It's also worth noting that apparently Mr. Magoo has a maid. He has a maid that is briefly shown in the background of one scene, and yet the dog Angus does everything for him. Make sure that he's dressed in the morning, make sure that he's avoiding everything. I mean, in a cartoon, it makes sense, but in live action, you see, this is why translating animated media into live action doesn't always work, because you're questioning stuff like this when you shouldn't question it, but you don't question it in a cartoon because in cartoons you're allowed to stretch reality like that. When you bring that into reality, suddenly questions are being asked. Unless your movie is just full blown fantasy, sometimes questions like that need to be asked and answered. This brings me to probably the worst characters in this entire movie, that being Waldo, Mr. Magoo's nephew. First off, he is one of the most annoying, bland, possible characters you could think of. His actor isn't even trying at all. He acts as if he's the overactor in your theater class who takes all of the notes that the director gives and does it to the 11th degree. And it is just as painful as you would imagine. Meanwhile, he has this love interest played by Jennifer Garner who does absolutely nothing in the movie. She's literally just there to be a love interest. And this was before she was famous, so I guess she just had to do it or something like that. More than I could say for Ernie Hudson and Malcolm McDowell. Ernie Hudson plays one of the investigators who's only doing the case so he can write a book about it. He's pretty annoying, and Malcolm McDowell is only in one scene where he's this big criminal guy, and he's has a statue, but the other criminal keeps breaking the statue, and there's water everywhere. Oh, doesn't even get on everybody. It's just wet. Also, it's the most breakable statue in the world. The the other guy didn't even do anything to it. I think he just briefly hit it slightly, and then it just crumbled into pieces as if he dropped it. Clearly, that statue has been broken before, is what I'm trying to say. So the criminals find out that Magoo does indeed have that medallion, or gem, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And they're like, hey, Magoo, I'm in love with you, and I'm a reporter. I want to ask you some questions. So they do that, and Mr. Magoo starts to actually fall in love with her, but She doesn't like him because she just wants the medallion. Meanwhile, the authorities keep thinking that Magoo is the one who stole the medallion, and they go to his house, and this white guy is dressed up as a Hindu man. Don't know why he needs to do that. And so I just bumped the mic. And then one of the most annoying chase sequences in history happens. Well, there. So the one guy realizes that Mr. Magoo is on. The investigator. He hangs himself on a coat rack, and miraculously that works. Meanwhile, the other jewel thief, the male one, he goes through the doggy door as if there wasn't another door he could go through that was unlocked. And oh, his pants fell down. Can you tell I'm amused? I'm very much invested in this movie that I'm reviewing for you guys. Eventually, the cat gets out of the bag. Thief is there. Waldo figures it out. Angus figures it out. Mr. Magoo finally realizes that that chew toy is not a chew toy, it's a medallion. And the lady is lying about being a thief. And she instead says that she's in the FBI, so she went from lying that she's a journalist to lying that she's in the FBI. Okay. And so they go on this big car chase where the other robber steals Mr. Magoo's Studebaker with the weird windshield that's made to perfectly replicate his messed up vision, which shouldn't be safe at all, but miraculously it works for Mr. Magoo. And when he gets into the eggplant mobile, which is a thing for some reason, maybe it makes more sense in the cartoons. He's running over things, crashing into things, but he's always okay. Just get this man glasses. Give him glasses already. Chase happens, it's stupid. But by far the dumbest part of this chase is when they get into a construction tube in a construction site, and gravity is making them fall out of the tube, and Waldo is screaming at Mr. Magoo, hit the brakes. Now, I want you all at home to sit here and ask me how hitting the brakes in that situation would stop the car from falling out of the air. Newsflash, it wouldn't. Maybe in a cartoon, but not in this real world. Plus, the movie isn't explicitly cartoony enough for that to work. Like, if it was overly cartoony and was almost like a parody of itself, and it did have gags like that, then maybe it would be kind of funny, but it doesn't. Or at least its attempts at that more so seem like this will make babies laugh, which is not how you should go about writing. You should always write things that personally make you laugh. But anyways, they go off to this little ski resort so that they can get that medallion. Mr. Magoo disguises himself as this crime lord, Mr. Peru. Around this time is when I started to notice that Waldo keeps on calling Mr. Magoo Unc. You mean to tell me that one of the most common phrases of the mid 2020s came from Mr. Magoo? Take that back. It actually makes a lot more sense when you think about it. I mean, both are pretty dumb things. So it makes sense that they go together. There's a double cross where where the lady she double crosses again, as in psych, I'm not with the FBI. I'm a jewel thief. And so Waldo has to go stop Mr. Magoo, and they brought the dog for some reason. And it's just a big old action sequence. And the FBI guys, they find him, and they start to shoot at Waldo, when literally nothing is stopping them from shooting him. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In between all that, Mr. Magoo is at this little meeting for a bunch of criminals to try and auction off the jewel. And he sees that all of these little crime lords, they have tattoos. That's what makes them scary. Mr. Magoo doesn't have tattoos, so he's not scary. Okay, I'm gonna pitch what I think would have been a funnier joke to put here. What he does is that he sharpies on a drawing of a frog on his chest, and so that's his tattoo. But it's a marker, so when he gets into the hot tub, it goes away. What I think would have been funnier is if Mr. Magoo already had tattoos. They're just not cool crime lord tattoos. They're just really weird old man tattoos, like a frog or something like that. And then they still piece together that he's Mr. Magoo because Mr. Peru, Mr. Magoo, they say that joke like 5 times. They fight for the medallion, they escape, they have a big chase where he's riding an ironing board as a snowplow, as a sled, and they for whatever reason can't shoot at Waldo because he's on a snow bike. But whatever, I guess. If anything, just shoot at him anyways. When has that ever stopped police? But there's just a big old chase scene. There's enough of those in this movie, and we eventually get into Climax Town, where there's this big wedding in Brazil, and that's where they're going to pawn the jewel off to. And so Mr. Magoo and Waldo have to go back to Brazil to get that medallion. Is perhaps one of the dumbest things I've ever gotten this angry about. So that Mr. Magoo and Waldo are talking about the lady, and at one point, Magoo mentions that she is a good kisser. They never kissed in the movie. Yeah, there was a scene where they went on like this little date thing, and Mr. Magoo went in for a kiss, but his vision's bad. 2, his eyes were closed, and the lady put a fish in front of him instead, and yeah, that he kissed the fish. They even made reference to it later and before this point. This movie literally forgot that these characters did not kiss in this movie, and yet they still wrote that line in on how she's a good kisser. And it's not the case that Mr. Magoo thought that was her and continued to think it was her. No, she flat out told him that it was a fish. So this movie just doesn't care. This movie not caring, who would have thought? So they're going through this wedding, all these shenanigans happen to try and get the medallion back. They run into this weird, albino monkey, I think it is. But it's owned by the people at the wedding, I guess. And eventually, and they climb into the home where the bride is getting ready. But Mr. Magoo ends up scaring the bride, and the best way he could think of it is to change into the bride to get the medallion because it's a wedding gift. He runs away and he mistakes a helicopter for a limo, which is okay, fine, regardless, that's a method of transportation. And he gets the. Eventually, people keep taking the medallion from him. He gets in the helicopter and gets the medallion back. Although he falls out of the helicopter into the water. Same thing with the lady thief. And they're both in the water. The rescue come in because Mr. Magoo's name is cleared. They get on a raft. They try to hook him up because they're about to go off a waterfall. Mr. Magoo ends up hooking the safety hook to the lady thief instead. And probably the weirdest and dumbest thing I've ever seen in a movie that is not really designed to be this weird just happens out of nowhere. Mr. Magoo is flying over the waterfall with a raft in a bride's dress. I want you to keep in mind that for those of you listening to this, I did not add that silence. That is just me trying to take in how utterly weird and stupid that is. Because it has been days since I've seen this movie, and I just can't let it go. It's so idiotic. Why is that in the movie? It I swear, I went into a classic angry reviewer moment when I saw this because I didn't know this was coming. I was like, oh, what are we doing here? But yeah, the rest of the movie happens. The bad guys get arrested. Mr. Magoo gets the jewel back. His museum's up again. The stupid book gets published. There's more jokes about him being blind. Waldo's girlfriend comes back into the movie. I already forgot she existed. And the movie ends in probably the dumbest way it possibly could have. It ends with a little note that says this. The preceding film is not intended as an accurate portrayal of blindness or poor eyesight. Blindness or poor eyesight does not imply an importance of one's ability to be empowered in a wide range of jobs, raise a family, perform important civic duties, or engage in a well-rounded life. All people with disabilities deserve a fair chance to live and work without being impeded by prejudice. Of course, this movie isn't accurate to real life blind people. What are you, friggin' stupid? And I want to keep in mind that that little disclaimer at the end of the movie is very fuzzy and like tiny letters that are poor to read for people with poor eyesight. Because name one blind person who is like Mr. Magoo. You can't. So pointing that out is almost as insulting to the audience as the rest of the movie was. In fact, I say almost because it's more insulting. That was probably the most insulting thing in this movie. That was one of the most insulting, tedious, brain rottingest things I have ever seen. And of course, the movie it recommended I watch afterwards was another live-action Disney movie from the 90s based off an old cartoon, Inspector Gadget. Hey. Please, Wheel of Names, do not select that. So, yeah, Mr. Magoo. How would I rate it? 1 star. 1. Big giant Pooh Bear. This is the worst movie I've ever had to watch for this show. It is awful. So, yeah, I don't want to watch this movie ever again. I'm kinda glad that I got to scratch this off the bucket list of bad movies, but this is definitely in my top 10 of the worst movies I have ever seen. And I feel like the world would be a better place if this movie didn't exist. But anyways, that'll be it for this week's episode of the Happiest Cast on Earth. What do you think of the live-action Mr. Magoo movie? Please let me know down in the comments below. Although I will admit, it was kind of fun to talk about a bad movie again. We haven't talked about a true stinker on the show since the world's greatest athletes, like 2 or 3 months ago. I mean, yeah, there was the Jungle Book episode, and I didn't really have a popular opinion to say about The Fifth Element, but again, that was an April Fool's Day episode, and The Fifth Element is universally liked, and I don't really fall into that camp of liking the movie. But this is the first pure bad movie we've had in a while, so I guess it was kind of therapeutic because not every piece of Disney media is good, guys. But anyway, if you guys would like to follow the show, please be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify once I get the Spotify thing figured out. And please be sure to tune in next week to the Happiest Cast on Earth, where we shall be taking a look at The Amazing Race, Season 16, Episode 5. I think we're fighting the Germans, right? But until then, I will see you later. Bye!